In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 of the biggest fears that are blocking you from evolving and embodying your highest self. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. For those that are new, my name is Christina and I help people on their spiritual and healing journey so they have a fulfilling and purposeful driven life. So let's dive in. So with fears, what we've got to understand is fears are actually just illusions of the mind. The fears don't actually exist. It's the fear of the fear itself we are fearful of. And the fear is something we've projected into the future, which creates anxiety, because that's what anxiety is. When we are stuck in the future, we are predicting an outcome that potentially might happen, and we are jumping to conclusions and think of the worst case scenario, and all it is illusions of the mind. It's the ego attaching to a story that you've told yourself that a possible outcome may happen, and it will always be the worst case scenario when it comes to our fears. And so the first fear that is blocking you from evolving and growing as a human in your life is actually fear of judgment. And this is quite a common one. I think this is quite a collective fear. There are so many people that have fear of judgment, including myself. Like, there are some days where I feel like, is that person thinking that about me? They're thinking I'm weird, they're thinking I'm crazy. And I just got to ground myself and come into presence and go, stop being so ridiculous. People don't actually think all those things. People are so wrapped up in their own lives. They're in their own ego, in their own traumas, playing out their own traumas all the time. They don't even think about what other people are doing half of the time. Firstly, that means you can worry a little less when I say this. People are so wrapped up in their own lives, they simply don't care about you. And that's not to say people don't care about you, but they're not thinking the thoughts about you that you believe they are. And the reason why we have this fear of judgment is because it's rooted in survival. And so what we want to do is follow the crowd, follow the tribe, because if we don't, that could mean death, and following everybody is safety. So we do things that may seem normal to people. You don't go outside of your comfort zone. You follow the crowd maybe to stay in the crowd, stay in your comfort zone, because that feels safe. And this is the thing we have to remember with our fears. It's all rooted in survival. It's because our nervous systems get triggered when we think of our fear. And so we go into this survival mode and we do our best to stop having that trigger, having that fear come up. So we do everything possible to stop that, when the key actually really here is facing your fears and acknowledging that you actually have some fears around, maybe fear of judgment or whatever fear it may be. So I think it's important to be really compassionate with yourself with this. We have to remember that it doesn't really matter what people think anyway. So you have to remember, when you do try to step outside your comfort zone, no matter what you do, your fear of judgment will always come up, because it does it as a survival mechanism. And so it's okay for the fear to be there, but it's not helpful in any way. And it's about having courage to do that thing anyway, even though you may feel the fear of judgment. It's feeling it, but doing it anyway. And for me, over my life, this has come up for me time and time again, fear of judgment. I even fear of what my partner thinks of certain things, and I hold myself back. And I'm starting to take steps now to really overcome this by just doing it anyway, and doing things in front of my partner where he may think I'm crazy, but I don't care anymore. And I think we all have that in common, and particularly if you are spiritually inclined or you want to take that next adventure, start a new business, whatever like project or passion you have, that you are holding yourself back from starting because you fear your family, your friends will think you're crazy. They'll think you're, what the fuck are you doing? That's not realistic, because I've had that so much aimed at me, saying that my business wasn't realistic and that I've got to come back down to earth and all these sorts of crazy things. And I think that's their insecurities. If people project their judgment onto you, that's their insecurity about them. So you can be compassionate with them when they do that and understand, well, it's not actually you, it's them. And so you kind of just let it go then and just ignore the comment. But the fear of judgment can also come from childhood, I find. Childhood can make you fear people's criticisms, people's feedback. I'm somebody that really does not handle criticism very well, and that it comes from my unpredictable childhood. I went through a lot of trauma. My mother was very emotionally unavailable. She was in and out of like hospitals. My dad was a drug addict, so I didn't have very much stability. For years and for pretty much my whole life, I just couldn't handle any feedback. I felt like on the spot. I felt people were going to judge me. Like particularly when I was in school, I couldn't handle feedback about my work. I felt so embarrassed because I felt like I was just being judged, like I was a really shitty person or something, and I couldn't handle it. And it would make me feel like I am not good enough, because at the root of these fears, we've got to understand, is that we are not worthy, we are not good enough, or some deep rooted belief you formed as a child. So then it creates a fear based off of that, and the fear is just an illusion, and we always jump to the worst case scenario with our fears. So the second fear that is blocking you from evolving and embodying your higher self is fear of the unknown. And I think, again, this can be quite a collective, common fear. People like predictability, they like safety, they like to know what's going on, having control. And when you go in a situation where it makes you feel like you have no control, you don't know what's going to happen, it makes you fucking shit yourself. And I know that's been the case for me as somebody that is a recovering controller, or somebody that likes to have structure and order for safety and know what the heck is going on. I really do struggle with the unknown. This is been one of my biggest fears that I've been working on and to overcome. And it's and the thing is, here you have to understand that sometimes in life we cannot control things. We cannot know the possible outcome of things that may happen. Like something terrible might happen tomorrow and it may blow your life apart, and you have no idea to how to control that. So sometimes these things do happen, and it's about not having control over every single situation, because the more you do control, sometimes you feel more out of control. That's been the case for me anyway, because the more you try to project an outcome and create safety, the more you get so resistant to the unknown, and the fear becomes a bigger and stronger. So when we begin to accept the situation you are in, or accept that, like, I don't know what's going to come next, except if I take that step, this is the unknown for me, but then tell yourself that everything works out in the best case scenario. I think that's the key here, because like I've said, we're always thinking of the worst case scenario with our fears. So with the unknown, we don't necessarily know what is going to happen, and we just got to remind ourselves that everything is working out in the best case scenario, and that life is happening for me, not to me, and that we can begin to embrace the unknown. And then when we begin to accept what is going on, then we surrender to the process, and the fear simply dissolves. So my third and final fear that is holding you back and blocking you from evolving is fear of failure. Fear of failure will keep you trapped in a box, in your comfort zone, and will not let you evolve because you feel like you're going to fail, so you don't even try. You feel like, oh my God, what happens if this thing happens? What happens if that happens? What happens if I just fail and I'm back to square one? And the thing is, just think of it like this. This is how I think of things. It's like, what's the worst that can happen when I go to take that step, when I go to take that business adventure? If I fail, I'm just going to be back where I am right now where I am, and it's not a bad place. We fear that. So it's not necessarily that if we fail that everything, the world's going to end. We've got to remember that it's not the worst is going to happen. And often fear of failing is rooted from a childhood too, when maybe you were criticized, maybe you did fail at something and your parents, a teacher, somebody really heavily criticized you and just put you down for something. So now you keep yourself trapped in your comfort zone because you do feel like if you do something, if you go to learn the guitar, if you go to ask that person out, well, that's fear of rejection, but you'll fail at it. You go to start that business adventure, but you feel like you will fail. And this is rooted as well as in not being worthy, not being good enough. And when you begin to reframe those, do the deep inner work around those beliefs, your fears again will dissolve the fear of failure. But once if you have the fear of success, because that is the paradox to that, the counterpart, if you want to call it. We also fear success because we are afraid of our own power. Sometimes we are afraid of our own light. So that can be just a lovely little bonus one there for you. The fear of success can stop a ton of people from really stepping out of their comfort zones and embodying their higher selves. And I believe there's nothing wrong with having fears. What fears are is ego survival, and the ego is not your friend, but it's not your enemy. I think in the spiritual community, we are told the ego is the worst thing ever. It's something that's got to die and dissolve and go away. But it's something you can work with, is the ego. Something that can highlight your fears, your limiting beliefs about yourself. And then you work with those fears and limiting beliefs that the ego has attached to. And that's when you can begin to let those fears go. So I hope this video has been really helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to check out this video next. I dive into how to finally overcome your fears. So with that being said, I will see you in that video. Much love.